Today we're doing a project on this irrigation manifold. The issue is it's causing water hammer within the house, and while it might not be the manifold itself, when the system comes on, the irrigation system, there is a tremor that occurs throughout the plumbing in the house. I've checked it from the inside, from the basement, where the water line exits or goes through the wall, and when the water comes on, it's not that the pipe is moving, but there's definitely a vibration there. And I've also checked it out here at the manifold, and there's a serious amount of vibration out here. So this might not be technically water hammer. Water hammer is typically when water is shut off and there's a sudden stoppage. We actually have it in an upstairs shower, where when the water is turned on or off, there's a little bit of that there. This is it's somewhat the same, but nevertheless it's something that's been disturbing us for some time, and I need to get it resolved. This system's been in place for 4 to 5 years. We didn't have this issue before. It is something new, and if you look at the manifold here, but by the way, these manifolds this is like a $700 manifold, maybe closer to $800, so this is not a cheap item. You don't want to mess this up. But it's really, look how wobbly it is. There's really nothing supporting it. So we're going to dig around this and find a way to support it. And that electrical box on the wall, that's unrelated. That goes out through conduit to some lighting within the yard. So that's not part of this, but nevertheless, one of many projects I'm working on today. And please excuse the drone of the cicadas in the background. We are in the 17-year cycle brood X for cicadas this year, and it's very noisy. I'll come back in just a moment. Okay, the cicadas are really screaming now, up to 86 decibels. I just measured a couple of minutes ago. Nevertheless, we have dug out the plumbing here around the irrigation manifold, and just to go over this real quickly, on the left here, this is copper coming out of the house through the irrigation manifold, copper going down until you see the white, which is PVC. That's Schedule 20 PVC, which is run throughout the yard. That's what they used for the actual irrigation runs. Now, it's no more or less shaky as it was before, but this is part of the problem with regards to water hammer. Now, I could put a water hammer arrestor on this. They look like an upside down Coke bottle, a little one, but I think I can get away without doing that. I'm going to try to reinforce this to the best of my ability, and then see what happens from there. And I am going to run a test here in just a minute to watch what's the pipes do now that I've got them exposed. But I was concerned that there could potentially be a water leak that was eroding the soil around the pipes, but that's not the case. So I'm glad that that's not the situation. But we'll take the next step and move on. Okay, we're back at the irrigation manifold, and in a prior video segment, I had dug all of this out, exposing the underground plumbing. And just to back up a little bit here, we have an issue, or have had an issue, with the irrigation system creating water hammer in the home, but it's happening in the reverse that you might think of water hammer. Water hammer is typically when water is shut off abruptly. Solenoids, especially solenoids for irrigation systems, cause this because it's just a sudden stoppage of water, and that column of water can cause a lot of noise, depending on the plumbing system. So in this case, every time the system would cycle on, we would get thumps, reverberations, groans, you name it. And it started in the wall of our dining room. I rectified that by foam filling that wall. That was probably 9 months ago. And that sound went away. but the overall sound itself did not disappear, or I should say the effect. So the next thing to address was this, the irrigation manifold. And what I did here is pretty simple. I ran a piece of rebar deep into the ground, and I actually have a property line stake here, just two handy pieces of metal that I used to run down either side of the copper plumbing here to add some lateral support, so this doesn't wobble, it doesn't shake all over the place. And it definitely was vibrating and moving when the irrigation system would come on. It got so bad that it was not just when the irrigation system would come on, it was actually doing, this was moving and noise in the house and all of that was occurring when each zone would be activated. So I could literally sit in the house and just, I could hear the noise and know that this the irrigation system had moved from one zone to another. So very perplexing. I did, by doing all these other things to kind of eliminate the outlier noises, I was able to isolate and determine the root cause, and I'll show that in just a moment. Okay, we're going to do a quick water hammer test here. Take a quick look at the plumbing first. This is the city water coming in. This is a branch to nowhere. This goes up and over, up and out through the wall to the irrigation manifold that we worked on today. And then this goes up and out through the rest of the house. You know, the plumbing and fixtures and throughout the house. So this foam here, I just put this in place to kind of dampen this. This does have the ability to move and move loosely. It's really, except for that clamp up there, there's nothing else holding it to the wall. I don't think that's part of the problem, but I did that anyway. So we go to the phone app here, and we're going to start the irrigation system. I know this is going to make noise. I just don't know how much noise, but I will try to. I've got all the ventilation turned off and everything, so you can hear the sound as clearly as possible. Come on, app. Hydro-wise, I'm going to do run Parkway, and we're going to do run now. So here it comes. 1, 2, 3. You know what? I think the sound actually came from the expansion tank. And the expansion tank it's relatively new, but I saw it move. I actually saw it move. Now, because the system's pressurized now and it's running, I won't be able to do this again for a couple of hours, but I actually think it's this. Come back and look at this again when I can. In a couple hours I'll do this again. I'll run another test. I'm in the basement once again, and we're looking at the expansion tank. A lot of the noise from the water hammer when the irrigation system cycles on seems to be originating from this point. The tank was suspended by a metal strap before, and I removed that and replaced it with 2 plastic straps. Metal on metal, that just didn't seem to be very smart to begin with. And I have a new expansion tank here in the floor just to use as an experiment, but haven't installed it yet. So anyway, we're going to turn the system on this morning. I'm going to actually put my hand on the expansion tank this time around and see if it moves, or watch it anyway. It will move. Okay, it moved that time, for sure. No question about it. So this whole thing acts like a pipe organ, right? Noise from here reverberates all the way through the plumbing, and you can hear it throughout the house. That's essentially what's happening. But because this is can't talk. Because this is suspended, it's it bounces, it moves. So I don't think this happened before. I think, you know, this this tank is probably causing most of the issue. I don't know if installing a new tank will resolve the problem, but I'll probably try it just as an experiment. Okay, the expansion tank has been removed, and this is a TW series from Water Systems Division. This one was installed in 9/1 of 17, and it was pressurized originally at 70 psi. It was close to that. It was probably 65 to 67 psi when I checked it. It's not leaking, meaning the bladder is you know, there's no water coming out when you check the pressure. So from that regard, it's fine. But this thing was hopping, jumping, clicking, tapping, groaning, thumping, you name it. It was doing all kinds of stuff when the irrigation system would come on. So I've replaced it with a new A.O. Smith expansion tank. This is a 4.8 or a 5 gallon, I forget exactly, expansion tank. But what we're not going to do is we're going to have some fun. We're going to cut this open, and I know cutting it open is not going to reveal the issue necessarily, but it'll at least give me something fun to do. So on to the next step. The expansion tank has been opened up. I cut the top off of the tank. I actually don't know if this is the top or if this is the top, but this is the water inlet side, and this is the air inlet side, or the pressurized side of the tank. So as you can see from the top here, you got the metal or steel outer part of the tank, and then you have this layer in here. It's like, I'm not sure I can pull that up, there. So it's like a white plastic nylon material, and it's designed to protect the butyl rubber bladder. So let's take a quick look at the tank here, and I've ripped this open. There was nothing wrong with this in terms of it wasn't leaking or anything like that. So and it was holding pressure. But in looking at this, you can see how the rubber bladder goes down to here. I believe it's clamped in or snapped into place here. And there's a securing ring that holds this in place. This is non-serviceable, obviously. Once you cut this tank open, you're done. But the thing I did notice, so you've got basically three components. You've got the metal tank, you've got the nylon plasticized dome or protector, and you've got the rubber butyl rubber bladder. And the thing that I noticed is, as you pull this back, you can see right here, see how it's glued? There's like some type of super adhesive here that's holding this in place, and it will not move. But on the other side, it pulls back very easily. And you can actually see, I don't know if that was some of the adhesive or if that was just dirt. I'm not sure, but you can kind of see where the adhesive starts to grab right there, and it kind of goes around roughly about half of this bladder. So as I mentioned, this was causing major noise when the irrigation system would come on. This bladder, which I believe, you know, under normal circumstances, the bladder kind of sits somewhere in the middle of the tank. And then as an example, as you turn the water on, the bladder raises up, and as you shut the water off to any faucet in the house, the bladder is going to go downward, and it's going to absorb some of the shock. Well, when the irrigation system kicks on, this bladder is likely raising very quickly and probably to its maximum limit,
because there's a lot of water, or there's a large water column that goes outbound from the house to the irrigation system. So with this sticking on one side and being loose on the other, it was causing shuddering. It was causing the tank to hop up and down and move left and right and groan and tick and do all kinds of things. And I believe that is the culprit or the root cause of this issue. So I'm not a plumber. I don't know if this entire thing was supposed to be glued or if this is a byproduct of something else, if this is a manufacturing defect or what have you, but that is what I found from working on this. And we'll move on to the next segment. I'll show the new tank in the basement now that it is installed. After reviewing this segment on the cutaway of the expansion tank, I realized the lighting was absolutely terrible. So I'm just going to take another look at this real quick. You can see this steel band right here that holds the bladder in place where it's clipped in, and otherwise just a lot of rust. So again, the culprit, the root cause of this issue is that one side of this bladder is glued in place and the other is not. You can see right there, it's just super tight. And when the irrigation system comes on and this bladder moves, it's scooting, or it's something, it's doing something, making a horrible amount of racket, so much so that it makes the entire tank shudder, thump, groan, you name it. Makes ticking noises and all kinds of stuff. But the issue is resolved, this project is closed, and we move on to the next project. The new expansion tank from A.O. Smith is installed. This is a 4.8 gallon tank, same as the tank that was removed, which was from TW Series, the water systems division of that company. And I picked this tank up at Lowe's. I could have very easily have hit up a plumbing supply store and purchased the same tank that was here before. However, that tank only lasted for 4 years, so I wasn't inclined to go down that path again. This is not a brand against brand comparison, but I've had good experience with A.O. Smith components in the past, water heaters, etc. So I'm hoping to get the same from this. Now let's walk around the other side, get a little bit better view of this. I installed this just yesterday, so I marked 6/20/21 on the tank, and you can see just look how the plumbing is. Okay, and this was done by the builder 13 or so years ago, and it was the way that they ran the plumbing here, the copper, you can see it's held in by these straps, and actually those are not the straps that were originally there. They had used a steel strap, and I pulled the steel strap out because it was it was making a metallic sound, like when the old tank would move or would shudder, etc. I think those metal straps were just making the sound worse. And again, your plumbing is like a pipe organ inside your house, so every little thing counts. I think what I'm going to do is rigid mount this tank at some point, or at least rigid mount the plumbing above to provide more support, because there is some motion here, obviously. And I know this is, I don't know, well, I can't say this is typical. And looking at plumbing in other houses, usually plumbers will run copper between two joists and then drop the expansion tank in between, which provides really good support. They didn't do that here. I mean, this is just, I'm sure you've seen worse. I'm sure there is worse, but whoever did this really didn't think or put much thought into how they position the plumbing in the tank, etc. So I'm going to make an improvement on this. But that's it. That's the new tank.